3 people jailed in New South Wales over 5.8 million NDIS fraud, disability provider accused of billing 1 million in fraudulent NDIS claims in a month, businessman jailed over breathtaking 395 million NDIS fraud. But that's not all. A Sydney medical therapist jailed over 500 NDIS fraud. These are just some of the recent news headlines exposing the dodgy, corrupt, and highly amoral people in our society out there this year alone. Hi, I'm Lucia. I am a support coordinator from True Support team here in Melbourne. If you find these discussions meaningful, please subscribe to my channel. To everyone who has already subscribed, thank you so much for your ongoing support. So let's dive into today's topic. Today I want to talk about a big problem that's been affecting a system designed to help Australians' most vulnerable people: fraud in the National Disability Insurance Scheme, or NDIS. Over the past year, we've seen some of the shocking cases where individuals and organizations have taken advantage of the system for their own gain. Let's go through some of these examples in a bit more detail to understand the scope of the issue. In one of the most complex NDIS fraud cases to date, 3 individuals in New South Wales orchestrated a 5.8 million scam involving the NDIS and the Australian Taxation Office. The trio created fake participants, fabricated invoice, and lodged false claims for services that were never delivered. They systematically exploited the NDIS billing system over several years, siphoning funds intended for Australians with disabilities into their own pockets. These fraudulent actions depleted resources meant for legitimate participants, putting strain on an already overburdened system. The investigation, headed by the Australian Federal Police, involved coordination with the NDIA, AUSTRAC, and Services Australia. The interagency collaboration was crucial in untangling the complex web of deceit that the perpetrators have created. They used false documentation and complex financial transfers to hide their activities, requiring investigators to delve deeply into the banking records and data trails. And in the end, the AFP revealed that the fraudsters funneled the stolen funds into luxury items. Ultimately, the 3 individuals were convicted and handed sentences from 3 to 6.5 years in prison. In addition to jail time, they were also ordered to repay over $575,000 in restitution. This case demonstrates an importance of rigorous oversight and cross-agency cooperation in uncovering and prosecuting NDIS fraud. However, it also demonstrates the vulnerabilities within the system, which are being exploited by individuals willing to manipulate processes for personal gain. Let's have a look at another example. This egregious example of NDIS fraud involved a disability service provider that billed over 1 million in fraudulent claims in just 1 month. This provider exploited system loopholes to charge for services that were never delivered. Many participants weren't even aware that the claims were being made in their names, and some even discovered the discrepancies in their funding plans only after the fraud was uncovered. The fraudulent activities came to light when the NDIS Quality and Safeguards Commission noticed irregular patterns in the provider's billing. This triggered an investigation that revealed the scope of the deceit. While the Commission acted quickly to shut down the provider's operations, the damage had already been done. Participants affected by this fraud had to navigate a lengthy process to restore their funding. While this is devastating, the good thing is that in response, the Commission has introduced stricter audits, real-time monitoring, and more accessible reporting mechanisms to catch fraudulent behavior early. And while these measures are a step in the right direction, they also place additional pressure on an already complex system. The most staggering NDIS fraud case involved a businessman who stole a breathtaking 395 million through an elaborate scheme. And the scheme involved numerous fake companies, registered non-existent participants, and submitted false claims for services that were never delivered. The stolen funds were funneled into offshore accounts, enabling him to live a life of extravagance, purchasing luxury properties and indulging in buying high-end goods. The sheer scale of this fraud makes it the largest in the NDIS history and has raised significant concerns about the system's vulnerability to large-scale exploitations. This case revealed some serious gaps in oversight, particularly in how providers are registered, and monitored. The businessman was able to operate multiple shell companies without raising red flags, highlighting weaknesses in the due diligence process. The parliamentary inquiry that followed this case has emphasized the urgent need for systemic reform. Experts have called for introduction of advanced fraud detection technologies such as data analytics that can analyze billing patterns and flag unusual activities in real time. The fallout from this case is immense. Beyond the financial loss, the reputational damage to the NDIS has continued to erode public trust. Participants and their families now face heightened scrutiny during their own funding reviews, as the system struggles to rebuild accountability. Let's have a look at the last example. An occupational therapist betrayed the trust of her clients and the NDIS by defrauding the scheme of $500,000. Using her position of trust, she submitted false claims for therapy sessions that never took place. Many of her clients, some of whom were among the most vulnerable participants in the program, were unaware of her actions until contacted by the investigators. This betrayal of trust has lasting repercussions for the participants she worked with, leaving many feeling exploited and vulnerable. So in this case, the investigators uncovered that the therapist manipulated records and exploited gaps in oversight to carry out her fraudulent activities. Her actions not only depleted funds, but also undermined confidence in healthcare professionals working within the NDIS. The case highlights a worrying trend of individuals within trusted professionals abusing their positions to exploit systemic vulnerabilities. The therapist was sentenced to 6 years in prison, reflecting the severity of her crimes. This and all of the other cases really highlights the vulnerabilities within the system and the importance of oversight and regulation. So one of the biggest steps in fighting against fraud has been the establishment of the Fraud Fusion Taskforce, or FFT, back in 2022. This task force was created to detect and stop fraud in the NDIS by bringing together experts from 19 government agencies, including the Australian Federal Police, the Australian Taxation Office, and the NDIS Quality and Safeguards Commissions. By working together, these agencies can share information and expertise to uncover fraud more quickly and effectively. Since its inception in 2022, the FFT has investigated over $1 billion in suspicion payments, prevented more than $60 million in potential fraud, and referred dozens of cases to court. This team also relies on tips from the community to track down the fraudsters and protect NDIS participants. The FFT's work has been a game changer, helping to safeguard the system and make sure that the NDIS funds go to the people who need them the most. The fight against the fraud within the NDIS isn't over, but there is definitely progress. Every case of fraud is not just a crime against the system, it is theft from the people who depend on it to improve their lives. By improving oversight, educating participants, and using advanced technology, regulatory bodies are working hard to restore trust and ensure the NDIS remains a reliable and vital source of support for those who need it most. The good news is that despite these challenges, the response to these fraud cases demonstrates that progress is being made, slowly but surely. The introduction of advanced fraud detection technologies, real-time monitoring systems, and increased interagency collaboration is strengthening the NDIS against future exploitation. As a faithful taxpayer myself, these news of course bring joy to hear that corrupt and immoral individuals are being caught out. And I guess my final thought is that I don't think it's a good idea to just focus on how flawed and prone to exploitation the system is, and push blame onto those who have created the system in the first place. But instead, we should focus on untangling this mess. It does mean it will take time to completely rid the system of weak points, but we are surely on that path now. That's all for today. Thank you so much for watching. Please like this video and subscribe to my channel, and I'll see you in the next one.